Well, hi there. Hello, humans and non humans. Welcome back to another episode of Non Traditional Headspace. This is Denisse. And yeah, I'm still wearing a vest and some long sleeves because it's kind of cold in my house right now. Mm, it's already supposed to be the start of the spring here, but for some reason, climate change, the weather is kind of crazy these days. So, although there's a little bit of sun coming out more and more, there's certain times of the day where it's all cloudy again and I get cold again. And so, my body thermostat is crazy. So, needless to say, I'm cold as usual. So, today's episode, what is it going to be about? Well, for the nosy ones who enjoy this kind of content, there's a treat for you here. I'm going to talk about long term relationships. And in particular, as usual, I try to put myself as the first example about everyone else's cases, but also from what I know about people I know from, or friends, or acquaintances, etc., or what I observe, which I like to do a lot. Now, the first thing is, what would we define as a long-term relationship, right? Because I don't know, like for some people, 2 years is already a long-term relationship, or even 1 year. But I think 1 year is still too, fresh. Anyway, so whatever it is that you define a long-term relationship, just to um, put myself as an example here, well, I've shared with you like very, very few things about my actual relationship. And I think there's people out there that don't even think I'm in a relationship because, yeah, it's not quite obvious sometimes. I don't like to make it quite obvious. Like, when I mean I don't like to make it quite obvious, I mean not obvious like most people would do these days. And how do people make it obvious these days? You know what they say? Before, like 10 years ago, people would say, like, if it's not on Facebook, it's not official. But now it's not Facebook, it's social media in general, I would say. So if it's not splatter all over social media, then it's not official, which I totally disagree with because you know what? There's also a lot of sayings about like the more you feel like you need to show off, that should be an indicator that something's wrong as well, because some things are to be lived privately, at least that's my opinion. But of course, there's a lot of people these days that would totally disagree with me when it comes to that because I see a lot of people just, melting the internet with love. If we could say they're in love, which I don't know. And I've read about this a lot, and I'm trying to not, like I said, I'm trying to improve in certain areas, which is not judging people and not criticizing people's lives. But it's inevitable when you go on social media and you see these things, and then you wonder, like, well, am I the one who's fucked up, or is this just how things are supposed to be? Why isn't this my experience? And then you kind of start getting, questioning yourself and your relationship because it's probably not being portrayed as other people seem to be portraying it on social media. So, fuck that, by the way. Your experience is your own experience. So, whatever it is that you're going through with your partner or your couple or the person that you're dating, well, that's your own experience. And with that being said, I don't expect this to be everybody else's experience, but I will share with you what's going on. So with this, I have the other, like thing to bring up is marriage, because I've talked about this before in other episodes, blah blah blah, about telling people or people telling me when am I going to get married, because I've been with the person I'm with now for 7 years now. Yeah, 7 years. Again, speaking about my own experience, feels like a lifetime already. 7 years, and people start bombarding you with questions like, when are you getting married? Or why aren't you married? Like, have you thought about getting married? And I cannot even recount how many times I have answered this question over the past 5 years that I've been dating this person, Not the first 2 years, because people know it's like, tricky to ask the question because you're still trying to figure out the relationship. But after the second year, people start asking the questions like, has he even considered having that conversation with you? And they always turn it towards the men, which I don't like either, because, it's a mutual decision, by the way. I've thought about it, of course, and I have the answers I'm giving. We're speaking about now recent times here, like now. If somebody asks me that these days, like, yeah, I thought about it, but the honest truth is I don't want to get married. Me, Denisse, I don't feel like getting married. And I have to answer these to my parents, to his friends, to his family, to my family, to my friends, to people I know, to people I encounter, because people are very nosy. Like I've said, people are just very nosy in general, and they want to know what's up, even if you just met. Like when they realize you're in a relationship and you start getting deeper in the conversation, and you mention that, and colleagues, by the way, from work sometimes, and they realize that you've been dating this person for more, like I said, more than 2 years. In my case, it's 7 now. So they ask, why aren't you married? I'm like, well, maybe because one of us doesn't want to get married, or maybe both of us don't want to get married, or whatever it is, but we're not married. And what's the big deal with that? In my mind, that's how it goes and plays, but apparently in other people's minds, it doesn't. We have gone through ups and downs, and those ups and downs become bumps on the road that make you either go forward or move backward. And in our case, I'm not gonna lie, it has made us sometimes move backwards, whether it's him or whether it's me. So we go back and forth sometimes. And do I want to get married someday? Sure, why not? I do believe in marriage, and I'm gonna talk about that thought in a moment. Now, speaking of marriage, right? What does marriage mean to people? Well, if you ask around, and if you were to get honest responses, which we don't usually get when we are in different scenarios. And remember that I'm from Latin America and my partner is from Europe. So that already changes the thought process of people, because they have a way of thinking about marriage and we have a way of thinking about marriage, or at least the idea that they have sold us for the entirety of our lives in Latin America, which is marriage is sacred. Okay, I agree. And it's a very, very high weight, responsible decision that you have to make. Otherwise, don't just make it. But we can have like one single whole episode about this topic, actually. So get married or not get married. And before getting married, this is like the huge question that people, it's a taboo in Latin America till this day. And don't tell me it's not, because I'm going to call you on your BS on that one if you say no. Because the honesty, if you go and ask traditional families in Latin America, would you live with your partner before marriage, and how well is that being seen? The answer is it's not well seen. And you know it. And I know it. And all the people who have religious backgrounds in Latin America would answer that. You could be very much judged by the people around you, or secretly, and they would just talk behind your back about this, like, oh my God, they're living in, in sin and blah. Okay, anyway. So this is a huge question. And I've had discussions like this with people before, and friends and family already. And you know what? I believe that certain people have thought that way, like, oh, no. That's wrong. You should never go and live together with someone that you're dating before marriage, because that's sinful, or that's just not correct, or that's just not morally correct in their mind. But I'm talking about like having conversations with people, like maybe again, like 10 years ago or less, 8, 7 years ago. And they would be very, very close-minded about it. But those people have grown to be my age now. You know what? I believe a lot of them would go back to that moment and completely disagree. And they would say, you know what? Actually, the idea of living with someone before getting married doesn't sound too crazy. And it's like a logical and more well thought thing to do. I personally am of the type that yes, it's something that should be done before getting married, because you don't want to find out surprises until you get married, whether you are able to cohabitate with someone and then realize, oh fuck, I got married and now I have to go through, if this thing doesn't really work and I realize that I hate sharing my space with this person that I got married with, then what's next? Like a whole lot of deals comes next. And that is my fear of marriage, actually. Like the whole compromise of, making a huge commitment like that and then realizing at some point, like, hell, I want to get out. And it's going to be a little bit more hectic than if you weren't married. But you see, it takes certain level of maturity to understand that. But the problem is that when you're younger, this is what you're taught. Like, it's not okay. It's not the right thing to do. You should value the sanctity of marriage and wait until you're married so you can share the life. And that's why you find a lot of people who are fucking old, like damn old in Latin America, who are still living with their parents, waiting for that way out until they get married, which is totally something that I don't agree with either. If your ass is 30 years, listen to me on this one. Parenthesis here. If your ass is 30 years or older and you're still living with your parents, got news for you today. Biatch, you better get out right now and take your ass to an apartment, or whether you want to share apartment with somebody else and have a roommate, whatever it is. Get your ass out of your parents' house and be independent and test what it's like to have some certain type of responsibility without living under the skirt of your mama, if that's the case, usually for men, or simply being daddy's girl for those women who like to be quite comfortable, waiting for their charming prince to arrive. Like, come on. Cut the bullshit with that. That's just your excuse for not being responsible and being a grown-up and an adult and realizing that life is gonna suck when you meet that person and they realize that you are needy as fuck because you have never been on your own before. Boom. Shakalaka, close parentheses on that one. Moving on. So, again, marriage. Marriage, to me, if you ask me, what is marriage? Well, it's an economic institution. It's like a contract. You actually, there's a paper, right? When you're getting married, you sign a paper, you make that commitment, and you add other things to it if you have like the religious type of marriage, and then you also have the civil type of marriage, which is the actual one that society recognizes as being a formal marriage. So it's an economic institution, and what I like about it is that you are accepting that you will have responsibilities when you, or that you are acquiring responsibilities when you are getting together with somebody else through marriage. They immediately think like, this is so beneficial for me because I'm going to get the best out of this because this person is going to have to share everything they have with me. Well, newsflash to you too, not necessarily. And even though in this type of the world, in Western civilizations here, or societies, people see marriage as that type of transaction. They do, right? So don't be surprised if you're dating a European person, or some, not all, some very particular North American people who would tell you like, okay, yeah, I'm getting married because there's a benefit out of it. Like we pay less taxes and, inheritance and other things around it. And that's why they would date for a while, have kids, and later decide to get married. Which in our world and in our mind, Latin America or any other third world country, like, damn, that blows our mind. Like that, no. That's not what marriage is to us. Marriage to us is this beautiful story that they have sold us and that we believe in, and I include myself in that, where everything becomes magically beautiful because you're in love and you want to share everything you have with the other person and blindly want to give everything that you have to the other person. And you expect that the other person that you're with is going to do exactly the same. But not true. Not necessarily true. And that's when we clash sometimes, because that person that you're dating tells you, hold on a minute, would you sign this other paper? Prenuptial agreements. Have you ever heard of those? Yeah. Or maybe just, they talk about, oh, well, this is family inheritance. And even though you and I are going to be like very, very close family if we get married, right? Immediate close family. You didn't work for any of what my family inherited me, because that is my family inheritance. So that's where you have to be very aware of what you're getting into. That's where you really have to pay attention, because that's when you realize who you're getting married with. So that's why I don't believe like there's so many people out there that get married and then suddenly they're surprised afterwards, like post event, about all these intricacies of getting married and all the implications that it brings. To have this type of conversations like, oh, stop assuming. That's the point. Let's stop assuming that things are going to just be magically perfect because we got married and we're going to be sharing everything. Do you really honestly know if that person that you're with is willing to share everything that they have with you? And as we've talked about this before, every time money is involved, and in marriage, money will be involved. And if it's not involved and you don't discuss finances together, red fucking flag, okay? Before and still, like I said, Western society has always looked at it more as an economic transaction, whereas our societies in Latin America, for instance, we also want out of marriage for the person not only to be this economic institution with us in a marriage, but we also expect them, like I said the other day, he has to become my very, very, very BFF, my best friend has to be my partner, my confidant, and my passionate lover as well. So I want all of this from the person I'm with. All of it. I want all of it, or I don't want anything. And if not, this marriage is broken. Yeah. And that, I have to say, that is something that I have to deal with myself, because I have forever had these huge expectations. I am the person who has, I still have it, by the way. I have a Pinterest board with all the things I want for my fucking wedding. That's who I am. And you know what? I've thought about it. Like I thought about it 10 years ago. I thought about it 15 years ago when I first started making. I didn't have like Pinterest because it didn't exist, but I had notebooks and of cutouts of things that I would expect for whenever I got my perfect wedding day. And yeah, I still have those expectations. And the problem is I have those expectations. And I've thought about even getting things one way or another. And if not, then I don't want to get married. And that's part of the expectations I have. And that's probably blocking the next step in my own personal relationship as well. Because I have too much expectations. And yes, I know I should lower them. But it's easier said than done, actually. So don't tell me like you should lower your expectations. Otherwise, you're never going to be happy because you always will want this other person to satisfy. It's not that I want the other person to satisfy those needs. I know exactly what I want. That's the point. And I'm not willing to let go of those needs that I feel that I have when it comes to getting married. So yeah, that's an ongoing discussion, with myself mostly. And I'm here to admit it. I don't care. Judge me if you want, but you know that there's people out there who have the same problem. They just won't admit it. I admit it. I don't have a problem with that. And with coming with that, like I said, like people have all these needs. We have these needs and expectations. Then we have to understand that we don't have to cross the line, because that's when long-term relationships can become complicated, which is what I want to step into now that I'm, with my partner for 7 years now. I would be a liar if I would say that everything has been, pastel colors and rose gold, which is my favorite tone of rosy color, by the way. Rose gold. If you're gonna give me something that is rosy, rose gold, yeah. No, it hasn't been that way. It hasn't been that way. And I would be a liar if I said that it is, and that I have the perfect relationship, and that I don't envy anybody else's type of relation. That's not true. Okay, it hasn't been perfect. It's not perfect right now, and it's an ongoing process. Like I said, I'm still navigating the long-term relationship thing, because if this thing is 7 years and it's supposed to be like a forever when you get married type of thing, that's where it scares the fuck out of me. So yeah, there's monotony, and I want to understand how to get rid of that right now, because yeah, I feel like after I went through last year of trying to adapt to a new environment, and I'm still trying to, get over that stage of adaptation, and the fact of feeling like I have made sacrifices again, yet one more time, not for this particular relationship, but in my previous relationship as well, I felt like I had given too much. And right now, it's not that I feel that I have given too much and it's unequal, because this person has tried to meet me all the time, halfway, so it's not fair to say that the opposite here. But I do have to say that every now and then, when, you're at a low, like I was last year, I had a lot of lows, okay? Inevitably, I was like blaming the other person for part of what was happening to me. For instance, coming here, again, this person is from here, I'm not from here. And I feel right now like I have given too much by coming here and leaving again everything behind, which I was okay. I'm a loner. By this moment, I have realized that I'm okay being alone. Like, if there's something I'm not afraid of, is being alone. Trust me, I don't mind being alone. But realistically, we're no islands, right? We cannot like self create certain things unless you let other people help you. So this is where I try to, open the door for my partner to come in and anyone else to come into my life. But yeah, that place where I'm at right now, it's not the easiest one for my partner to deal with. And like, I really appreciate the fact that this person makes the effort of trying to understand where I'm coming from. And that's like points on the list, for that. So at the same time, though, it makes you feel guilty, because then you think like you're over or rethinking everything about the relationship, but you don't know if it's the right thing to do, because this person has been there, for you. So yeah, avoid monotony is one of the crucial things that we're trying to overcome these days, because sometimes you get, habituated to doing things a certain way. And what has happened to me and my actual partner is that, yeah, we've been 7 years together, but I have broken down the analysis of our own relationship, and I have realized that from those 7 years, this past year that we came here is the actual very first year that we have ever lived together without having something or someone in between our relationship. And why do I don't mean like infidelity here, so clear that one there. I mean in terms of always having friends come along, or roommates in our case. Like when him and I started dating, we lived on separate places, you know, like he had his apartment, I had mine. And I loved my apartment, by the way. It was cute. Like it was personalized to what I liked in that moment. So I really liked that apartment. But at some point, I had to move from that apartment because the person sold the apartment. So I moved to another apartment. I still was living on my own. But then because I moved, I had extra room in my apartment. And then there was this friend, a girl, who came to live with me. And I was still, you know, engaging in this relationship with my partner. So he was the one coming over. But I was already having a roommate. You see where I'm going here? Like I had a roommate. So whether we like it or not, when there's someone in the mix, whoever it is, whether it's just a simple roommate, that we didn't even really cross schedules most of the times with this person. But the fact that you always know in the back of your mind that there's someone that might open a door, that you might cross in the hallway of your apartment, you know, whatever it is, you are always kind of precautious. And with that, okay, but before I get to that, so that was the first. And then as we started dating more, and we realized like, this is stupid, you know, you are always coming here and there's no point of me paying double here, so I'll just move with you. Because then I realized that I was going to move from that country. So we're like, oh, why don't you move in with me, he said, and just wait for it's time for you to move to the next country, and we move in together when we leave to the next country. And then, yep, I agree. Point is that when I moved with him to his apartment, he had a roommate. So I was living with a roommate. Then I moved to his apartment to live with him, but he already had a roommate. So again, we were in a mix where there was another person. And no, not a problem at all. Like I have always lived in apartments where I have roommates, and I totally agree with this because it also helps you to, you know, to interact with other people and feel what it's like to, again, cohabitate and share things with spaces with people who are not exactly like you. So that helps a lot for adaptation as well. Anyway, so he had a roommate, and then we finally ended up moving to another country, and we ended up living together in the other country that we moved to, but with a roommate as well. Because yeah, that was like kind of good for expenses, you know, it lowered the expenses, so why not? So you see, there was always somebody in the mix, and then weekends were always like involved with somebody else as well. Always activities with friends. So that's when I realized recently that this is the very first time that we're living alone, like in one single space where him and I are alone, and there's like nobody else on the other room of the house or the other rooms of the house. And yeah, you know what that means, right? You're getting to know each other more. And surprise, surprise, there's a lot of things that I definitely get triggered by these days, especially because, you know, I was going through a rough time last year. So everything that the other person does, even if it's your partner, can become a trigger, because it's the easiest vent you can have is to get angry at the person that you're with, because they know you too well, and you know that they're not going to be as mean as like a friend would be, or just another person that you live with would be. They would tell you the truth, and even if it hurts, they wouldn't care, because actually your situation is not their situation and they don't owe you anything. So that's where things get tricky these days, you know. And that's what you need to avoid. Like I've seen these, like there's this post in Instagram that, you know, that part where you become like somebody else's mama or kind of maid from the house when you're in a long-term relationship. Or people wrote there like when you're in a marriage, but for me, being in a marriage is almost like being in a long-term relationship, like I have been, you know, almost, or even more. People have been together for 10, 15 years, I don't know, without being married, or even more, or a lifetime. So yeah, not specifically marriage, but I would call it long-term relationships. That's what you want to avoid, like becoming somebody else's mama, or becoming somebody else's, like, kind of like maid, in terms of, oh, I pick up everything after you. So that's not something I look forward to. And that phase of a relationship, you want to skip it, believe me. But guess what? If you're in a long-term relationship, there's no way of not skipping it. You will have to deal with that. And that is very, very triggering to me right now, because I have not experienced it before. Like, I realize now which are those tiny little details that trigger me so much. I can share some with you, of course. It's not that I want to paint the other person like, it's not fair. But anyway, I will say it because this is my experience, okay? Anyway, like that, fucking leaving things all over the place. In my mind, it's like, who's gonna pick that up? Like, because I'm not, because I'm getting tired already of doing it. So it gets to a point, first time fine, second time fine, but third time, fuck this shit. I ain't picking it up. I won't. Like, I'm not here to pick up your stuff. And or like, I don't know if women out there, I'm talking to women maybe out there, I don't know, or somebody who plays this role in the relationship here, but I don't know, like toilet, bathroom, common areas, like, those things need to get cleaned every now and then, right? Because they don't magically just get dusted off or cleaned off or sanitized. So yeah, the hairs in the drain, and in this case, we both have long hair, him and I. So it sucks, because we cannot even tell sometimes whose hair is the one that is stuck in the shower drain. But I can tell, because I go into details on that. I can tell which is my hair, of course, and which is his. There's a phrase in Spanish that I was laughing about with me and my little sister when I visited her recently, and she's like, who's gonna do that? And her boyfriend would usually answer like, el pendejo, like the dumbass, of course, like referring to himself, like, but in a funny way, like in a funny way. Like, do you get it? Like, when I see that, like, just picture me, okay, going to the bathroom, seeing the toilet that has like this ring of dust because nobody has cleaned it, and nobody seems to be getting the initiative of picking up the brush and just maybe wiping it up a little bit. And we have wipes and everything. No. Who's gonna do that? La pendeja. Oui. The dumbass. I don't know the word in French for that, but I have to figure that one out because I want to say that in French now. Like, who's gonna do it then? The dumbass, of course. Why would you even ask? It's not even a question to ask. And that is something that scares me sometimes, because guess what? I have noticed here, in particular where I am living, maybe it's a territory thing, like in this area where he grew up, that it seems to be bounded more towards women doing the household responsibilities and men being the one in charge of providing and, doing manly stuff and blah, blah, blah. Abort mission. Abort fucking mission then, because I didn't grow up like that. Like, my mom, I have an older brother, and I know that my mom didn't raise us that way. So fuck that, If you're in this with me, you're in this with me. Otherwise, we're out. Like, I am out. Like, where does that come from? I'm not supposed to be here like, okay, yeah, I went through a point in my life right now that I transitioned to not having a job to now getting a new one. But during that time, that doesn't mean that immediately all of the shores go towards Denisse and then the other person does shit, When did that change? Like, excuse me, No. The hell no. And I realized that having somebody else on the mix all the time, like I said, roommate, whatever, friends, whatever, would always, divert the attention of that precious couple's time together that we need to work on. So this is our greatest challenge this year, is working and building that intimacy as a couple, and understanding that we have to and here is where I have to understand, because both of us used to travel a lot, and we will be in that scenario again shortly, because I will start traveling a lot probably again due to job purposes, and he also travels for job purposes for long periods of time. So distance, being away, reuniting and building that anticipation helps. And this is where I get it now. I do get it now. This is why people get into cheating sometimes, because when they're with someone they have been like forever, or it feels like forever for some people, like I said, like for me 7 years is a lot, but some people would say it's nothing. Once things get monotonous, routinary, and there's nothing that you're working on to make that spark be alive all the time, and guess what's gonna happen? Somebody's gonna look for it somewhere else. I would never do it personally, because that's not what my values are, my principles, and that would go against everything I personally believe in. So I would never do that to someone, and especially after I have suffered it in my own skin. So no, that's a no for me. I would rather break up everything and just go and live a solo life and be single, live the single life. I would rather do that. But that's me. I cannot put my hands on fire for anyone here, including my partner. Like, who knows? Who knows? And I know it's like not nice for you to hear, but it's reality, people. It's reality. Like, I would be lying to myself if I would blindly say, oh, he would never do that to me. I don't know, girl. That's your prerogative. Mine is like, he might. Who knows? Like, he might change his mind, at some point. Like, we never know. I hope not, of course, but we never know. That's the truth. So yeah, is this why people get divorced then? Because of these things? Like, because I've thought about it. I get so freaking enraged certain days. Like, I do. Like, I find myself talking to myself a lot, like doing things and fixing things and cleaning things and picking up after things, and I am so freaking enraged. So somebody else out there, if you feel that way, can you please identify yourself so I cannot feel so, alone in this corner of life where I feel so fucking enraged when my partner keeps doing the things that I have pointed out that bother me so freaking much. Like, one thing, for instance, telling me that we're having people over and appearing 5 minutes before everybody else arrives. Damn it, would I kill that man with my bare hands every time he has done that shit. And yeah, I think the last one was like this week, and guess what happened? I had to go and threaten that motherfucker. Yeah, I told him, because people were arriving at 7, but we agreed he was in charge of making dessert and I would help with dinner, which is a lot more work, because dinner includes the, things people are going to be picking on, like the entries or the snacks, plus, the salad, plus the food, which was a well done food, like something that I need to take my time to do. And he was just in charge of a freaking dessert that he ended up making at his mother's place, because when he okay, I'm just diverting here, but I need to share the story because it's just like a little way of you trying to understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so I had to threaten him because I even had to ask him like way before during the day, like almost morning time. At what time are people coming for dinner? And he's like, I don't know, maybe 7. And I'm like, I'm not okay with maybe. At what time are people fucking coming? And he's like, okay, I'll tell them 7:30. Okay, that I can agree on. Thank you, 7:30. Okay, that's already an agreement there. Okay, 7:30, told him 7:30. I checked that in my mind. 7:30 is when everybody else is coming. I can do my things around that time. So next step is to tell him, well, since you're gonna make desserts and I'm gonna make the rest, I don't want people messing with my space when I'm preparing my shit. So either you make that dessert before I do, which means anticipate your shit, or guess what? You figure out where the hell are you going to make that dessert, because I don't want you taking up the space, because there's not enough space here for both of us right now. It's like, he's like, fine. Yeah, we'll be making this 5:30. So fast forward to this story. We actually went out, did mountain biking during the day, and we came out here. I returned home after the mountain biking. He got lost along the way. I have no idea where he stopped. Like, he stopped somewhere else. Guess what? I came back home. I took a shower, and it was 5 p.m. I had to go to the supermarket because I knew that I was missing some ingredients. So I have it all calculated, not for any reason. I have worked in logistics, people. So, yeah, 5. It was 6:04. I was back home with the things from the supermarket. I should have been earlier, but I know that, yeah, I was a bit late. But I, in my mind, as we had spoken about this before, 5:30, right? 5:30, meaning that 5:30, he should have been here preparing his dessert if he wanted to anticipate things like I told him before. I arrived at 6:04, and guess who was not in the damn house? Yeah, guess who was not in the damn house? My boyfriend was not there. Dessert was not even slightly being intentionally prepared. Nothing. So I started like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm just gonna start preparing things. And when he came, which was at 6:30, okay, 6:30. And I'm like, yeah, we spoke about this. And he's like, yeah, blah, blah, life happens, blah, 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 blah. You're too strict, blah, 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 blah. No, hold it, because I've been putting up with this like for a while now. I'm like, hold the motherfucking ship, No. This time it's not gonna go like I start adapting and I move to a little corner and I keep preparing and you are all over the place. No. Guess what? I stood my ground, people, and I said, well, guess what? I guess there's not gonna be a dessert. Luckily, I got some pre-made desserts from the supermarket, like those tiny little yogurts and mousses and shit. And maybe you can serve that to your friends, because guess what? In this space, you're not taking this space right now. I am doing my things. I warned you about this. And I told you this was the last time you were going to do this and pull this kind of crap. And he's like, when he saw I was serious about it, like, he got kind of scared, like, and upset. And he was mad. Like, he was pissed. But at the same time, it's like, this bitch is not joking. This bitch is not joking today. And I'm like, no, dude, like, don't even try. Don't even try, or guess what? There's not gonna be a dinner either. And, well, end of story is he ended up making dessert at his mom's house, preparing it there. And then he brought it back, and he still managed to come and interrupt a little bit. But the point is, like, those are the things that trigger. And I can see why these tiny little things, arguments, if they become so recurrent, can get people to get divorced. Because I have thought about it before. Like, when I am angry in the moment, I get angry. And yes, it shouldn't affect me as much, but hell, it does. And guilty for that one. And I know there's something that I have to regulate about how I deal with those emotions when that moment comes, about dealing with things that I have been telling somebody so many times. But that's not what life is about. And that's not what marriage, if people call that something that you have to put up because you're married with, that's not what life is about. Long-term relationship, marriage, whatever it is, if that's how it's going to be, I'm out too. Yeah. So these days, it's maybe I'm just maturing, you know. This is the reality of living together, realizing that certain things don't change. And I saw this in a doctor's post recently as well. Like, one of the main reasons people are getting divorced these days is because we get together with someone from which we have a picture of, or we have made ourselves a picture of. And then when we start living together and sharing spaces together, and we realize that certain things are not changing the way we think they will eventually change, because yeah, it will change, you know, he will understand or she will understand. Like, no, it doesn't magically happen that way. Change is something that is personal. We change because we decide to change as individuals. And this is another thing, like I've been ranting here, but it's so ample. Like, this topic is so ample. There's so many things that I could talk about this, but I wanted to share this because I'm going through this right now. I'm in this relationship, and I am evaluating everything because it's a something new right now for me. Like, I had not experienced this with someone before, like having to understand that there's so many things that I dislike now about this person that I'm with, but there's many more things that I do like as well. But you know, balance it out to the point where I'm not letting go of myself on the way. Because the moment that you let go of yourself because you're trying to save something, that's when it's wrong. So I'm trying to be very cautious here, you know, as to not to be over judging of the other person, but at the same time not to be over giving of who I am, you know, like to letting go of my essence, because this is who I am. I have always tried to live in order when I have been living alone, like by myself or with roommates, but within my own space. I have always tried to be organized and ordered, and this is something that I'm navigating right now in my relationship, because I'm not here to be anybody's mama or anybody's maid. I'm not going to. Like, this is something that I have decided from before this person and I dated. So believe me, it's not going to change. So there's certain things that we're not willing to change, and those are deal breakers, I guess. So this is when I see people going left, you know, or side or different ways because of tiny things like that. And then I do believe that children are a blessing. Like, I have talked about this before. That's not the topic today, but I do feel, and I'm just going to put that out there because I feel like saying it. I do feel that a lot of people bring children into the mix, which is procreating and having babies, and that serves as a distraction. But believe me, that's not going to help either. If that's the reason why you're doing things like trying to salvage a relationship, or just distracting yourself from the reality of what things are, it's not going to help. And then there's also things about long-term relationships that we should all talk about, which is what sex represents, or, you know, that sexual intimacy. What is it for the couple? Like, does more sex is what you really want, or is better sex what you really want? Because that's the quality of things that you're trying to aim for. Or at least that's what I feel it is for me now. Because this is where I feel like I'm maturing. And this is where I believe that sometimes the saying that women are like 4 years in advance versus the age of men, you know, in maturity. I do believe it, because I do feel like I'm starting to look at things in a certain way out of me growing up in certain areas. And that's where I need to make sure that this person joins me, you know, so we can be okay with that. Otherwise, it is also something that could affect the relationship. Could affect the relationship long term. And that is something that could affect that relationship long term. So that has to do also with, again, sexual intimacy. We talked about monotony and things that are expected, how to avoid people from, falling into that depressive state in a relationship where you feel like the spark is gone. It's not about having more sex, all the time. I don't think so. I don't believe that. And that's why people sometimes cheat. They try to fill in the void with that, but then they realize they're not happy either way. They're cheating at the same time they're with the person, and they want to have the best of both worlds, but you can't. Because guess what? When you're in a committed relationship, in a long-term relationship, that's not how it works. Going through rough patches can affect the couple because normally, one shot's off. And that disparity of things, is what doesn't help. But that's also the beauty of being in a relationship. What they say is that we have to try to work things out. But again, just try to work things out is the right thing to do. Because you love each other. But what is not the right thing to do is, again, to lose yourself in the middle of that. And people I like to quote or I can reference to is, like, for example, Jordan Peterson. He was having a conversation where I heard what he said, and you can break up or have 1,000 fights. It's your decision at the end of the day. Again, this is a personal decision at the end of the day. So in this case right now, in this point in my life, like, I'm choosing to having those 1,000 fights. Why? Because I'm trying to figure out whether those 1,000 fights are worth it or not. And if at some point, it gets to where you realize, like, well, I'd rather break up than it is what it is. It will be that way. So that's when I thank, if I am in that position where I decide that I need to break up things, we both come to the agreement that we should break up for any reason, that's where I would probably be thankful of not being married. But I do believe in marriage, and I do think marriage is a nice thing. And I saw this in another post as well, where somebody said, like, avoid marriage at all costs. And then a lot of people, the comments are, I like to go to the comments and read the comments. And yeah, I mean, it's a variety of opinions out there, and some people have their points which are valid and about why should you get married, and some people have valid points as well as why you shouldn't try to get married. And they're valid, like really valid points, if you analyze them well. But at the end of the day, again, it's a personal decision. If you decide to do it, fine. If you decide not to do it, it's fine as well. Boundaries are important, as you know. And what, again, Jordan Peterson said in that conversation that I really, it's stuck in my head, is like, we want to live in the best moments of the best days we had. Like, we want to live like that forever, and that's impossible. So yeah, what will this end up being for me? I have really no clue. I hope it works out for me and my partner, but it's not easy. No, it's not easy at all. Like, it's a daily work, and this rough patch where we're at, where we're just like not a little bit distant from each other for many reasons, because I've gone through things personally, like, that have affected me, but I have overcome slowly these days, and he's just hanging in there, but still has to work in certain things as well, so we can meet halfway. So I just hope that happens for both of us here, because there's not so much at stake. Like, we could perfectly move on from each other's lives and be fine with it, but at the same time, it's like you have invested time and energy and passion and emotion into this thing. So that's when you feel like you want to not fight for it, but you want to make that effort of making things better, And when you feel that way, I feel it's the right thing to do. When you don't feel like that and you feel like it's empty and dead, then I think it's time to move on. And as painful as it is, the truth is nobody ever dies from that. It hurts like a motherfucker, but none of us will die from that. So, yep. We'll keep talking about these things. I will probably later have a conversation with somebody else to discuss these things in a deeper level. Like I said, like there's certain topics here that could go further in conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and like. Tune in on Spotify and Apple Podcasts where you can listen and also watch the video of the episodes. And you can also watch it on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and we're trying still to figure out how TikTok works. I have no idea. Okay. So thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care and hope that your relationships are always successful. Bye.